Hey, happy Friday, everybody. I'm gonna keep this pretty fast because today's a busy day. But I wanted to touch on this topic because I thought it was pretty important, and I know it's gonna be trending. Um, hey, Just Being Jazzy's podcast. Hey, thanks for hopping on. For those of you guys who are joining, please get the likes up, tag anybody on this discussion who you think may find it interesting. Again, like I said, we won't be here too long. But we're gonna have fun. So get the likes up, tag anybody. Also, if you'd like to show support, you can find me Cash App, Venmo, Shay Charday. Lastly, as many of you guys know, um, we are working to try to get the Black Men Built That campaign, turn that into a video series. So again, if you would like to support that, if you want to see more of that content, focused on Black male inventors and just the different contributions they've made to the community, if you want to see that put in video form, be sure to become a channel member before January. And without further ado, let's just get right into today's topic. So, interesting enough, so what does Kyle Rittenhouse have to do with Black women resting in their femininity? I know it doesn't really seem like it's connected, but I actually feel like it is. Um, so, if you guys haven't heard yet, the ruling was made, and he was found not guilty of all charges. And I'm just gonna read this article real quick, um, just to give you guys a little bit of a recap or let you know what's going on before I kind of share my thoughts on it. So let me pull it right up. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. Okay. So it said Kyle Rittenhouse found not guilty of all charges. So it says Kyle Rittenhouse, a teenager who shot and killed two men and wounded another as violent protest against police brutality swept through Kennesaw last year, was acquitted of all charges Friday in a closely watched case that has amplified national debate over vigilantism and law and order. As the verdict was read for each count, the 18-year-old quivered, sobbed, and on the fifth and final not guilty fell to his knees. He faced charges including intentional homicide and reckless endangerment for the August 2020 shootings. It took the jurors, 7 women, 5 men, 3 days to reach their decision inside a downtown Kennesaw courthouse, a capstone to a 2 week long trial that reignited the charges politics of the Trump era. In the years since the shootings, many on the right have embraced Rittenhouse as a symbol of heroism during demonstrations that shook Kennesaw, a city of 100,000 on the shore of Lake Michigan. Others on the left have characterized him as a teen who provoked violence when he traveled there with a AR-15 rifle from his Illinois home. Outside the courthouse, several dozen protesters and supporters of Rittenhouse crammed into the steps in frigid temperatures. The Second Amendment is alive, a man shouted as he gripped a poster that read, "Free Kyle." Phil Haney, 78, a resident of Kennesaw, came to the courthouse to experience the moment. Not guilty on all charges. Speechless, he said, shaking his head. It now gives people the sense they can run with rifles and shoot people in chaotic situations. The jury was not considering the issue of whether Rittenhouse should have been on the streets of Kennesaw with a rifle. Instead, it had to decide the much narrow question of whether he was acting in self defense each time he pulled the trigger. The protests last year in Kennesaw came in the days after a white police officer shot and paralyzed a black man, Jacob Blake, after being called to an apartment complex for a domestic violence dispute. Federal law enforcement and National Guard troops were dispatched across the city for several weeks to deter protesters and protect property. Dozens of businesses were destroyed or damaged in the unrest. Throughout the trial, prosecutors portrayed Rittenhouse as a calculated gunman, at times calling him an active shooter who roamed the streets of Kennesaw looking to spark violence. You lose the right to self defense when you're the one who brought the gun, when you are the one creating the danger, when you're the one provoking other people. But as the trial wore on, many legal experts came to believe that the prosecution would have trouble proving that Rittenhouse did not act in self defense. Video presented during the trial showed 36-year-old Joseph Rosenberg chasing Rittenhouse through a parking lot before Rittenhouse shot him. And it says a key moment came when Gross, I don't know how to say that, testified that he pointed a handgun at Rittenhouse and only that Rittenhouse shot him. Rittenhouse attorneys Mark Richards argued that the aggressors were the men whom the teen shot. Every person who was shot was attacking Kyle. One with a skateboard, one with his hands, one with his feet, one with a gun. Richards said in his closing arguments, "My client does not have to take a beating for the hands of this mob." In a high stakes move on the defense, Rittenhouse took the stand to tell his side of what happened in the streets the day in August, at times sobbing. I didn't do anything wrong, Rittenhouse said. I defended myself. President Biden reacted to the verdict on Friday, saying he stands by the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it, he said. So again, I just wanted to give you guys a recap of what's going on. I'm sure many of you guys are you know, fully aware and remember the protests that broke out last year regarding just a lot of the political unrest, Black Lives Matter, the shootings, George Floyd, all of the above. And this was, one of the many cases where there was a protest happening. He brings his gun, you know, people are killed, civilians are shot, people are killed, and make a long story short, he was just found innocent on, I think it was on all 5 counts. And then there was one article that I read where it said that the jury had even, or people who were even asked, okay, well, can we give him maybe a lesser charge? Maybe we don't do the maximum sentence, but maybe we can do a lesser charge. And the jury was just like, no, we want him to go off scot free on all counts. Now here's the thing. I don't pretend to be an expert on the justice system. I don't. But I have always believed that the injustice system is actually working. It's doing exactly what it wants to do. It is going to acquit. It's going to let people free that they want to, and then it's going to put people behind closed bars who fit a particular who fit a particular profile. That's a very unfortunate situation on both ends. Obviously, like, it's really unfortunate for the people who died. There's different reports where they're saying, hey, this was rigged, like the jury was, there's a lot of different things that were happening that were in his favor. So I mean, there's all this controversy, but at the end of the day, a young man at the time purposely brought a gun to a protest, shot and killed people, and now he is off scot-free. This is causing a lot of unrest. It'll probably continue to cause a lot of unrest. And here is my bigger point. We're going to continue to see situations like this because this kind of stuff has been happening since literally day one. Like we said, some have said that justice system is broken. I believe the injustice system is doing exactly what it wants to do, which is, again, protect some and not protect others. The unfortunate thing about this case is I firmly believe that if this particular male, Kyle Rittenhouse, was a Black man, then this would have ended up differently. No way he would have gotten off scot-free, killing 2 civilians. Even if it wasn't self-defense, there would have been something. There would have been something. He would have gotten some time in jail. So certainly, the profile of the of the convicted and the profile of the jurors, all that has something to do with it. But the bigger issue, I think the bigger issue to me is that, so it's in a political climate like this, or it's in a nation like this, where women, and many of us Black women, are being told that we just need to rest in our femininity. And here is the thing. This is just one of many situations. There are protests going around to this day. There are a lot of different people are protesting in their jobs. I just read an economic report a few days ago that was talking about how there is over 1,000 protests that happened just this year alone. Different factories, even different hospitals, just across industries, restaurants, all around, people are protesting. We're not seeing a lot about it in the media because, of course, the media, they kind of have their own things that they need to cover off, and they have their own, interest. So we don't hear those kinds of things being reported on, but that's actually happening. There's unrest there. There's unrest in the economy. People are still very much struggling, to try to make up for the money that they lost from last year, trying to figure out how are we going to now move forward this year on top of inflation, which has gone up. I want to say it's gone up like 5% all across the board. And so there's all these different components happening. There's another report that was released not too long ago that was talking about how, the Democratic Party has been mentioning how, like, the FBI, I guess, has been seeing a rise in neo-Nazism and threats being sent off to the Democratic Party. And I mean, if you look at the polls, they're not really doing too well. And the Republican Party is it's just there's just so much division. There is so much division. There's so much unrest. And so I think when things like this is are actually happening in the environment where we live, where women and men live, and where women want to, raise kids, raise families, I think it's a little bit, um, I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous to just tell women, "Oh, you're just going to rest in your femininity." Because here's the thing, I when I and again, I'm still trying to get a larger understanding of what resting in femininity actually means. But from what I've the way I've used it applied mostly is telling women that they basically don't really need to do anything. They just need all they need to do is just kind of sit and be pretty. There doesn't need to be really much thought. I was talking to a commenter a few days ago, and we were going back and forth, friendly discussion, friendly debate, if you will. But we were going back and forth, and she made this one comment that stood out to me, and it was this. I had made mention to her that there's this idea out there that, like, oh, black men have never been shamed for their dating preferences. That's actually what she said. She said black men have never have been shamed for their dating preferences. Never, never. And I'm like, if you actually look at the history, that's actually completely false. The birth of a nation as we know it was based upon that very premise, and we know that there were countless of false accusations made against black men, because they were falsely accused of touching a white woman, raping a white woman. So I'm like, there's actually historical data to completely debunk what you just said. And then she responded, "Oh, well, that's not my problem." This is a black woman saying, "Oh, well, that's not my problem. That's their problem." And so I'm talking to her, and when I hear this idea of rest in femininity, rest in femininity, rest in femininity, and I'm like, okay, but how are you resting in a nation, in a country, in a culture that is literally at unrest? How is that possible? Like, I don't understand. So thank you for those of you who have hopped on. Thank you. I mentioned before I'm going to try to keep this rather quick, but I just wanted to touch on some recent news that happened with the Kyle Rittenhouse, or Rittenhouse. I don't know if I get his name right. Case. And so yeah, please get the likes up, tag anybody on this discussion who you think may find it interesting. I've seen some comments come through. It says, I just think the media has no incentive to promote black men who protect themselves legally. It means you don't need black male protection or any protection. I see that. Sleek King Kyle the line. Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, yeah. So, like I said, if you guys are on, get the likes up. Also, if you guys want to show support for the channel, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Day. But, anyways, so what I was saying, I kind of mentioned some of the different things that are basically creating a lot of unrest in the country right now. Obviously, there's protests and stuff that are happening, that are being unreported by the media. There are inflation, which is causing a lot of people stress. On top of the fact that there's a ton of debt that people are in due to the pandemic. So there's that, and then there's been a reported rise in quote unquote hate groups, neo-Nazism, the far right, and then there's obviously issues on the left side. Like there's all this different stuff, and then we have this particular case that became largely politicized. And my bigger point for mentioning all these things, it's not necessarily to try to say, hey, here's the perfect answer, but it's more of being like, hey guys, this is all the different variables that are happening. This is actually what's happening in the world, in the environment in which, you know, we live, and where, us women who live in America live. And to just say, oh, well, just rest in your femininity, when again the country is at rest, again, is a very dangerous. That's a very dangerous thing. Now, here's the thing about it: there's never been a time, I think, really in human history, except for, I mean, unless you want to look at like maybe the top 1% in this, 17th, 18th, and 19th century, where the idea of being rich was associated with you not having to work. And that, I mean, I don't want to get too technical, because that's if we want to look at like the West, in like Britain and those different um aristocratic areas, like the idea of not having to work showed that you were like feminine and you were high up there. But I'm like, apart from that really small, that time in history, like, I mean, being a woman takes work. Raising kids takes work, you know what I mean? Raising a family takes work. Even trying to take care of your body, exercising, cooking food, like, spiritually, like having spiritual discipline, like, it takes work. So that's why I'm like, this idea of resting in your femininity being equated to not ever really having to do anything but sit and be pretty, I think is a little, that's just not, that's not good. Secondly, I personally believe as a woman that there needs to be, as a woman, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to the women that I impact, the women who are around me, my unborn children, you know what I mean? The next generation. I actually have a responsibility to them. I firmly and totally believe that. And so there's not necessarily a rest associated with that, or that doesn't mean that I don't work. That doesn't mean that I don't ever do anything. It's like if there is a problem that is within my ability to fix, if there is an issue that isn't within my ability to fix, then I actually feel like I actually am responsible. I have to do that. I have to address that. And so I have a real struggle when there's so much issues and there's so many issues happening, not in the society. Take away what's happening economically, politically, take away what's happening, just socially, and let's just even focus on the state of Black women. If we just focus on even the state of women or Black women in particular, there's so much work that needs to be done. And to say, oh, I'm just going to rest, that assumes that there's no need for change. That assumes that there aren't problems. That assumes that everything is well and everything is at peace. And I would be lying to you if I was to say, "Oh, it's all okay. It's all fine and dandy. Just go and, focus on the drama between the baby and Danny Lee. Just focus on that and level up, live your best life, and everything's going to be okay." Because that's not reality. That's not reality. And if you follow that line of thinking, you could find yourself in a very dangerous situation or in a perplexing situation and feel completely and totally unprepared because you didn't know what was going on. Hey, Omawali Africa, I appreciate the love. It says it's a falsehood and does not come from us as a people. I appreciate you challenging this femininity myth. No, definitely. Well, and I've talked to my husband about this, and I think that's one of the things I'm gonna continue to look into Black femininity from a historical perspective. What does that actually mean? I hear the term used so often: queen, goddess, you Black queen, all this kind of different stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what did Black queens actually do? What were their roles? What were their responsibilities? Because trust me, they weren't just sitting up on a couch all day, Netflixing and getting their nails done. Like, I mean, there are roles. They had, political responsibilities. They had there's coronation rights. They had certain things that they had to maintain. So even Black queens, the ones that we aspire to be or say that we are, historically they did have a lot of responsibility. And so that is one of the things that I want to cover off more, to kind of really dig more deeply into what does that actually mean. But anyways, so I see this comment. Yeah, Black women be telling each other's lies, a part of the lack of accountability we've been stating. Absolutely. Hey, Danica, I appreciate you. Always a pleasure to see you. Always, 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 always. Much love. Um, and I see exactly, yeah. So on Wally Africa, you get it. So yeah, that's one of those things I'm gonna cover off. What does it actually mean to be Black queen? Because like I said, that term actually came with a whole level of responsibilities, and it wasn't you just sitting around on the couch talking about that's not my problem. I'm gonna sit over here, Netflix and chill, and you over there, you Black man, you die, or you over there, you go fight all the battles, but meanwhile protect Black women. Like, no, that just no, that's wrong. That's bad. So um and like I said, it's curious to me that no, like I had a conversation with a commenter yesterday, and I'm telling her, hey, this actually historically is the different challenges that's happened in the Black community. This is what's happened, and her response is, oh, well, that's their problem. And I'm like, that's their problem. Oh, so are you not Black? I'm confused. But then in the same token, it's like, oh, but you need to protect Black women. So I'm like, this is y'all are just everybody's just confused. And what's this we need to really, really question this notion of being feminine means that you just rest and don't have to do any work. That's lazy. That's first of one, that's lazy. Not only is that lazy, that becomes extremely and incredibly dangerous in a culture of unrest. And as I mentioned before at the beginning of this broadcast, we are at a time right now where there is unrest. And the clock is ticking. There are many different things that are going on right now that are pointing to just that. And I'm not over here trying to declare like, oh, there's going to be a war or there's going to be this. Like, I'm not saying all that, but I am saying that it's just dishonest it's just honest for you to try to say, I have no responsibility. I don't need to do anything as a woman. I don't have any part to play in my little world while the world around you falls apart. And you just say, oh, that's someone else's responsibility. No, maybe it's not. Maybe there's actually something you can do. You know what I mean? So I see it sort of feels like black men is two races, black men and black women. I've heard that before. I That is another topic that I can't go deeply into that right now, but I want to say I think actually Omawali kind of touched upon that um and it beautifully in a podcast that I recently mentioned to, where it's like, yeah, historically we were there were systematic things put in place. There's systematic things put in place uh to kind of help instigate that divide. Yeah, I heard Amal Africa talk about that on his YouTube page. Also, Dr. T is on Johnson. So I don't want to get too deeply into that, but yes, I think unfortunately, there is now this there's now this like divide that exists within the community. But at the end of the day, systematically, we know if you're black or if you look a certain way, the system sees you for how you are. We can have however many tribalist arguments we can have. You can say, "Oh, I'm from this state," or "I'm from this tribe," or I'm Ados," or "Well, no, I'm Jamaican," or I'm whatever. Like we can be as tribalist as we want, but at the end of the day, if you're in America, you look a certain way, you fit a particular profile. There's historical evidence to support how you're going to be treated. You know what I mean? Like because that's how the institution was built. But anyways, so yeah, so like I said, that is a whole different conversation. But anyways, like I said, I'm gonna try to keep this pretty fast. But I just want to say, especially for women today, we are taught so much to care more about drama and to care so much more about who's sleeping with uh, what rapper chose some preference or didn't choose a preference, or what some I don't know Instagram model is wearing. Like I think we care about things that are don't really have any meaning. And while I'm not against having fun, I'm not against like resting. Like you do need to rest physically, obviously, and it is important to have spiritual rest, which that's a whole other topic in and of itself. So I'm not saying rest in and of itself is bad, but what I am saying is if we equate rest with doing nothing, and then equate doing nothing with femininity, that is bad. Being a feminine woman does not mean that you don't have to do anything. Our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, many of them, especially in the black community, had to fight, they had to struggle, they had to go through a lot of things to get to where they're at, to even get us to where we have certain like freedoms that we have today, or to even have certain privileges we have today, that came through work, and that came through them sacrificing different things, going through different things. So we do ourselves no favors when we say that femininity, I'm just going to rest on my femininity, or wow, this system failed us, or wow, the economy's hard, or wow, the injustice system is unjust, and I'm just going to sit over here and just sit on the couch, and y'all go over there and take care of yourself. You know what I mean? And this is actually, and this kind of leads me to one of my final points. This is actually why I do really see more and more and more that while we live in a culture that devalues men, men are incredibly important. And I'm like, I mean, this seems like it should be common sense, but it's like, no, men are actually incredibly important because I can even look at myself personally. I'll look at my own personal situation. There are so many different things that I did not even really consider until I married my husband. And then he would bring things to my point. He brings stuff up, and I'd be like, dang, like he'd ask me questions and be like, I don't know, I never thought about that, or he'll mention something, and I'd be like, oh well, you're right. Like, and I tell him like, well, man, I'm thinking about this. I'm talking about this with my friends. Like, it's just we're on two totally different wavelengths. And he said to me multiple times, he's like, look, women have, women have the luxury of living in fantasy. We go back and forth about that sometimes to this day, because I'm like, well, I don't know about fantasy, but the whole idea of essentially there's just the culture that we live in, there are certain allowances that are generally given to women that men don't have from a social standpoint, right? Women are emotionally more coddled than men. I don't think anyone can deny that. But with that said, it really takes a man to just to understand some of these different things. It takes a man, I think, or it takes a strong community of men to actually, I think, address some of the issues that we're seeing, maybe in the workplace, seeing maybe in the community, seeing in the justice system. Like it really does take, I think, obviously community, but it also takes, I think, men's guidance and leadership. And it really wasn't until I started to, just talking to my husband and seeing the way he thinks versus what the way I think, and I'm like, well, duh, like this is why, if we look at just history, men were usually the ones who were going off to war. When men were establishing nations or boundaries or trying to increase their boundaries, they were going out and doing that. The women were generally staying back, raising the kids. They were securing the home. We had different roles. We had different ways that we operated. And when I look now, and things are, things are kind of falling apart, or we're just seeing things for what they are. It's like I feel in some sense women, they're still wanting to take on that old traditional role of like, okay, I'm just going to rest and be secure in my place here as a woman, but they're not actually wanting to work with the men. And I'm saying, okay, look, if you do want to rest in your femininity, if you do want to be secure and safe, X, A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, you kind of have to work with men to do so, because men are the ones that help address some of these bigger, larger issues that we see in society. Again, that's not to say you can't have women working in politics. You can have women working in the, not economic field. You can have women. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying just generally, men are the one who establish and build society, and so you cannot really rest in your femininity, or you can't rest in a society that is at unrest. And in order for the society to not be at rest, things need to be changed, things need to be established, and you kind of need to work with men to do it. You can't go over there in a corner and say, I'm going to rest in my femininity by myself in my own feminine corner. Men, you go over there and handle your problems. Oh, but protect me when I need help. It does not work like that. You kind of have to work together. So, yeah. So, I just these kind of situations come up, and it shows me more and more. I'm like, ooh, like I see my limitations as a woman. Certainly, I see, why there's beauty in working together with a man, working together with a marriage, ultimately working together with a community. I see so much more. Like it's like, wow, like God really did create men and women differently, and that is a beautiful thing when you embrace it. So, um, like I said, this there's so much to address, but I'm actually trying to I'm getting a little short on time here. So just to wrap this up, ladies, just don't ever think that being a true feminine woman does not require any work. That's the biggest lie. And again, you cannot really, how can you rest in a society that is unrest? And if you don't believe that the society is unrest, then just look at the news. Granted, some of the news out there is trash, I'm not gonna lie, but just open your eyes and you will see, no, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. And we do need men, we do need community. I don't understand why that's such a hard thing to believe, but we really, really, really do. And when we work together, it's a beautiful thing. um, but when we stay in our corners and treat each other as if we are enemies, and then we believe all these silly lies that have never been tested through history, uh, you can lead yourself personally into a situation of being incredibly unsafe and being unprepared. And for many of us women today, that's what's happening. We're finding ourselves in situations that are too hard for us to handle by ourselves, and we don't know how we got there. And sometimes it's a mixture of things. It is a mixture of things. And so I see some comments. You can easily say, "Call use a situation issue." People just like the omen and Antifa. Yeah, like I said, that situation. I mean, I do not pretend to be a political commentator, and I don't pretend to know any and everything about just the system and how it works. But I just know it's these kinds of situations that come up and continue to come up that show me it's like, hey, this is not a time for me to sit here and just uh to just not think, to not be aware, to not be connected with God. Like especially, I'm like, man, I will tell you every single day I'm waking up and I'm like, no, I have got to start my day. Like I've got to connect with God like more than anything because things around here are getting crazy. And it's not to be afraid, it's not to be fearful, but it's to know that there is a responsibility that I do have in my little section of the world to actually make a change for the better. And as a woman, I can say, no, I have a responsibility to this generation and the next generation. And that does not mean me sitting down on the couch and saying, that's your problem. You go handle it. I'm just going to sit and rest in my femininity. No, it doesn't work like that. So, anyways, thank you for those of you who've hopped on again. Please get the likes up. And again, I want to thank all of you who joined me this Friday evening. I am going to have to wrap this up. As always, if you want to show support, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. And lastly, as I mentioned before, we are actively working to try to turn the Black Men Built That into a video series. Any of you guys who have been following me for some time in my community tab, seeing that we created a series where every week we were talking about the different inventions, the different contributions Black men made to the society, and it started to build a lot of traction. So the goal is to take that in written format and start to put it into a video series. And if that is something that you would interest you, then feel free to sign up to become a channel member. You can do that for as low as $4.99. Yeah, I'm excited about it, and we're trying to get at least 300 new members by January. And if we get that taken care of, then yeah, we're going to take that and make it into a video series, and hopefully start to have good, positive conversations about what's happening in the community, and good, positive conversations that are talking about the good things Black men actually have done. So yeah, if that interests you, again, feel free to sign up. Thank you, all of you who have opted on, and we will talk later. Bye.